A dead man kept writing in his logbook for 3 weeks, in his own handwriting. You're listening to Ham Radio Stories, where every signal hides a secret. When a ham radio operator dies, someone from the local club goes to the house. They help the family sort through the equipment, the radios, the antennas, the cables, and they check the logbook, the handwritten record of every contact the operator ever made. But when Tom Aldrin opened Walter Craig's logbook, he found 14 entries that should not have existed. They were dated after Walter was dead. 3 weeks of contacts in Walter's handwriting, with call signs that the FCC had never issued to anyone. And when Tom transmitted on the frequency from the last entry, someone answered. They said 4 words: "You found the logbook." Walter Craig had been dead for 3 weeks, but his logbook was not finished. Walter Craig died on November 4th. He was 78 years old, a retired electrical engineer, and the kind of man who labeled everything in his workshop, including the labels. His call sign was W2WRK, which he had held for 41 years, and which suited him in the way that some call signs suit their owners, not because someone chose it, but because it chose back. Among amateur radio operators, when someone dies, the community says they have become a silent key. The phrase means exactly what it sounds like. The key, the transmit switch, the paddle, the microphone button, goes silent. The frequency where that person's voice used to be is now just noise floor. There is a dignity in the phrase that most euphemisms do not earn. Walter earned it. 2 weeks after the funeral, the Carter County Amateur Radio Club asked for a volunteer to help Walter's family with the station. This is something clubs do. When a ham dies, their equipment does not die with them. Radios, antennas, power supplies, cables, microphones, test equipment. A serious operator's shack can fill a room, and a family that does not know radio does not know what any of it is worth, what should be kept, what should be donated, and what should absolutely not be thrown in the trash because it contains a lithium battery. Tom Aldrin volunteered. Tom had known Walter for 15 years. Not well. The way you know someone you see at the same repeater net every Thursday and the same field day setup every June. You know their voice better than their face. You know their operating habits better than their opinions on anything outside of radio. Walter was precise. He ran his station the way he had run his engineering projects. Everything documented, everything maintained, everything in its place. Tom expected the shack to reflect that. He was not disappointed. The shack was in the back bedroom on the 2nd floor. 2 transceivers, an ICOM IC7300 for HF, and a Kenwood TMV71A for VHF and UHF, a tuner, a dummy load, a power supply, 2 microphones, a desk mic and a handheld, an antenna switch, a small computer running logging software. On the wall, a map of the world with pins in 114 countries, a certificate for worked all states, a certificate for DXCC, a framed QSL card from a contact with the International Space Station, and on the desk, beside the ICOM, a logbook, not the computer log, a paper logbook, a thick hardcover journal, the kind sold at stationery stores, with a green cloth cover and a black elastic strap to hold it closed. Walter had kept a paper log his entire career. He entered contacts into the computer for electronic confirmation, but the paper log was the real record, the original, the one he trusted. Tom opened it. The first entry was dated March 12th, 1983. The handwriting was small, square, and consistent. Walter had used the same format for 41 years. Date, time in UTC, call sign, frequency, mode, RST sent, RST received, and a brief note. Tom flipped to the back. The logbook was nearly full. Walter had filled it chronologically from front to back, and the last written pages were about 3/4 of the way through. Tom turned to the final entry, and then he turned back one page. And then he sat down. Walter Craig died on November 4th. The last 14 entries in the logbook were dated November 5th through November 25th. 3 weeks of contacts, logged in Walter's handwriting, after Walter was dead. Tom said, quietly, "That is not possible." He checked the entries before the death date. October contacts, September, August. The handwriting was identical. Same pen, same format, same square, careful letters. He compared the pre-death entries with the post-death entries. Same pen, same hand, same format. There was no visible change in the handwriting, no tremor, no shift in pressure, no sign that a different person had written them. Tom pulled out his phone and photographed every page from October 1st through November 25th. Then he opened the computer and checked the digital log. The digital log stopped on November 3rd. The last electronic entry was a 40-meter SSB contact with a station in Brazil, logged at 23:14 UTC. The paper log showed the same contact, same date, time, frequency, and call sign. Entry matched perfectly. The next entry in the paper log, November 5th, had no corresponding entry in the computer. Neither did any of the 13 entries after it. The paper log had 14 contacts the computer knew nothing about. Tom picked up the phone and called June. He told her he was at Walter's place and needed her to come look at something. When June arrived, she asked what she was looking at. Tom told her, Walter's paper log, the last 14 entries. He asked her to read the dates. She read them, November 5th through the 25th. Tom said Walter died on the 4th. June asked who wrote them. Tom said it was Walter's handwriting. He had been looking at it for 20 minutes. It did not change. Same pen, same pressure, same format. The entries from October 30th looked identical to the entries from November 20th. June asked if someone could have copied his handwriting. Tom asked for what purpose. These were log entries. Date, time, call sign, frequency. Who forges a logbook? June asked about the call signs. Tom read them aloud. November 5th, W2GHT. November 7th, K2NVR. November 9th, WA2RMR. November 11th, N2PST. November 13th, KB2FND. June told him to look them up. Tom searched each call sign in the FCC Universal Licensing System database. The database contains every amateur radio license ever issued in the United States, active, expired, and canceled. W2GHT, no record found. K2NVR, no record found. WA2RMR, no record found. N2PST, no record found. KB2FND, no record found. None of the 14 call signs existed, not expired, not cancelled, not reassigned, never issued. June said that is not how call signs work. The FCC issues them from a structured pool. You cannot invent one that fits the format and have it not be in the system. Either it was issued or it was not. Tom said these were not issued. June said then Walter was logging contacts with stations that do not exist. Tom said after he was dead, yes. June asked about the frequencies. The frequencies were real. All 14 contacts were on HF bands. 40 meters, 20 meters, 15 meters. Frequencies within the amateur allocation, modes listed as SSB or CW. Signal reports reasonable for the band conditions that would have existed on those dates. Whoever or whatever had written these entries understood radio well enough to log plausible contacts on real frequencies with proper signal reports during accurate propagation windows. They just used call signs that had never been assigned to anyone. June asked about the notes column.
Walter always wrote a brief note with each entry. Good signal. First contact in Slovakia. Heavy QRM moved up 5 kHz. Normal logging notes. The 14 post-death entries had notes too, but they were different. Tom read them. November 5th, W2GHT. Understands now. November 7th, K2NVR. Says the antenna farm looks good from here. November 9th, WA2RMR. Glad the first kept the paper log. November 11th, N2PST. Told him about the coax on the north run. It will fail in spring. November 13th, KB2FND. He will find this eventually. That is the point. June told him to read the last one. Tom read it. November 25th, frequency 14.313 MHz, mode SSB, call sign W2FNL, note QSL confirmed, message received. June repeated the call sign W2FNL. Tom said it was not in the FCC database, same as the others. June said no. She told him to read the call sign again. Slowly. Tom read it. W2FNL. June said one word. Final. W2FNL. Final. The last contact in the logbook of a dead man was with a station whose call sign spelled out the word final. In amateur radio, final is the last thing you say before you sign off. You have heard it 1,000 times if you have spent any time on the bands. This is W2WRK, final and clear. Walter Craig had logged his own sign-off. Tom sat in Walter's chair for a long time. The logbook was open to the last page. The ICOM was on, tuned to the last frequency Walter's hands had set it to, 7.245 MHz. A 40-meter SSB frequency from the October 30th entry. June had gone home. She had suggested they show the logbook to Walter's daughter. Tom had said he would, but not yet. He was not sure why not yet. He was not sure of several things. What he was sure of was that he was sitting in a dead man's chair, looking at a dead man's logbook, and the radio was warm, and the bands were open, and the frequency in the last entry, 14.313 MHz, was 20 meters away on the dial. Tom tuned to 14.313, 20 meters. SSB, 14.313, is not a special frequency. It is not a calling frequency or an emergency channel. It is just a spot on the dial. Unremarkable. The kind of frequency you land on when you are tuning and stop because the noise sounds right. Tom listened. Nothing. Just the band. Just the ionosphere doing what it does. Bending signals around the curve of the earth. Carrying fragments of conversations from other continents. Mixing them with the natural radio noise of a planet spinning through space. Tom picked up Walter's desk microphone. He was not sure what he was going to say. He pressed the transmit button and said, "This is N2TAL. listening on 14.313. Nothing. He waited 30 seconds, a minute. He pressed the button again and said, N2TAL on 14.313. Is there anyone on frequency? 20 seconds of nothing. And then a voice came through the speaker. Male, older, calm, clear despite the static, with the slightly compressed quality of a real HF signal, the way a voice sounds after it has bounced off the sky. It said, N2TL, good evening. You found the logbook. Tom did not press the button. His hand was on the microphone. His thumb was on the switch. He did not press it. The voice had been clear, accented with the cadence of the Northeast, not strong, just present. The kind of accent that 40 years of living in the same county wears into your vowels without you noticing. It was not Walter's voice. Tom had heard Walter's voice every Thursday night for 15 years. He knew Walter's voice the way you know the sound of your own engine. This was not Walter, but it knew about the logbook. Tom pressed the button and asked who this was and what their call sign was. The voice came back. It said, You already have it. Last page, last entry. Tom looked at the logbook. Last entry, November 25th, W2FNL. Tom keyed up again and said that is not a real call sign.
The voice answered. It said 2 words. It is now. Tom waited 1 minute. 2. He called again. W2FNL, N2TAL. Are you still on frequency? No response. Tom called 3 more times over the next 10 minutes. The frequency was empty. He checked the S-meter. He checked the antenna connection. He ran through the troubleshooting steps that any experienced operator runs when a contact disappears. Band conditions change. Propagation shifts. The ionosphere does not owe you anything and does not care about your schedule, but the band was still open. He could hear other stations, a contest exchange on 14.320, a DX station in Germany calling CQ on 14.305. 20 meters was alive. 14.313 was simply quiet. Whoever had been there was gone. Tom sat in Walter's shack and looked at the logbook and the radio and the map on the wall. With 114 pins and the QSL card from the space station and the 2 microphones and the tuner and the dummy load and the antenna switch and every single piece of a life that had been organized with the care of a man who believed that keeping things in order was the same as keeping them alive. And he picked up a pen from the desk, one of Walter's pens, a fine point pilot in black ink, and he opened the logbook to the next blank line after the final entry. And he wrote, November 25th, 2347 UTC, 14.313 MHz, SSB, W2FNL, 59/59. And in the notes column he wrote, QSL confirmed, message received, 73. Tom showed the logbook to June the next morning. He showed her his own entry at the bottom of the page. She read it twice. June said he had heard a voice. Tom said yes. She said on the frequency listed in the last entry. Tom said yes. She said it knew he had found the logbook. Tom said that was what it said. You found the logbook. June asked if it sounded like Walter. Tom said no. June asked then who? Tom said he did not know, but he wanted to check something. The entry from November 11th had a note. Told him about the coax on the North Run. It will fail in spring. Walter's station used a tree-bander beam antenna on a tower behind the house.
The feed line ran from the shack along the eave and up the tower in 2 runs, a south run and a north run. The south run fed the beam. The north run fed a wire antenna for 40 meters. Tom climbed the tower 20 feet up on the north run. He found it. The coax jacket had cracked. Moisture had gotten in. The braid was corroded green. Another season of freeze-thaw and it would fail completely. The entry in the logbook, written after Walter's death, in Walter's handwriting, had described exactly this: a coax problem on the north run that would fail in spring. Tom climbed down and stood in the yard and looked up at the tower. He said quietly, "How did you know?" There are 2 explanations and neither of them is comfortable. The first is that Walter inspected his feed lines regularly, which he did because Walter inspected everything regularly, and he noticed the deterioration before he died and noted it somewhere, and that note found its way into the logbook through means that Tom could not explain. The second is that the logbook entries were exactly what they appeared to be. Tom did not choose between the explanations. He replaced the coax. At the next club meeting, Tom gave his report on Walter's station. He listed the equipment, the condition, the estimated value. He recommended the family donate the ICOM to the club's licensing class program and sell the rest through the club's consignment service. He did not mention the logbook entries. After the meeting, Hank DeVries stopped him in the parking lot. Hank said he had left something out. Tom said yes. Hank said the logbook. Tom asked how he knew about the logbook. Hank said he did not. But Tom had the look of a man who left something out, and with Walter, the logbook was the only thing worth leaving out. He asked what was in it. Tom told him. 14 entries dated after Walter died. In his handwriting. Call signs not in the FCC database. And the last one spelled final. Hank asked if he had tried the frequency. Tom said yes. Hank asked if someone answered. Tom said yes. Hank asked what they said. Tom told him. You found the logbook. Hank asked what Tom did. Tom said he logged the contact. Hank looked at Tom for a while. Then he nodded once. Hank said good. Tom said good. Hank said a contact was made. You log the contact. That is how it works. Tom asked, even if you do not know who you were talking to. Hank said especially then. Tom brought the logbook to Walter's daughter Karen on a Saturday afternoon. He had considered not showing her the final entries. He had considered tearing out the pages or photographing them and keeping the copies for himself, or simply closing the book and handing it over and letting her discover them or not, on her own time. He decided to show her, not because she needed to see them, because Walter had written them, and Walter did not write things that were not meant to be read. Karen looked at the pages and said it was her father's handwriting. Tom said yes. She said the dates were after he died. Tom said yes. She said she did not understand. Tom said neither did he. Karen read one of the notes aloud. Glad the first kept the paper log. Tom said that was the November 9th entry. Karen said it sounded like him. He used to say the computer was the backup. The paper was the real thing. Tom said he knew. Karen read another. He will find this eventually. That is the point. Tom said November 13th. Karen said he knew someone would look at the logbook. Tom said someone always looks at the logbook. That is what happens when a ham becomes a silent key. The club helps with the equipment. The logbook is part of the equipment. Karen said so he wrote a message he knew would be found. Tom said if that is what happened, yes. Karen asked what else could have happened. Tom said he did not have an answer for that. Karen said her father was not a mystical person. He was an engineer. He believed in documentation and maintenance schedules and calibrating things on the 1st of every month.
He would not have done something like this as a prank. He was not a prank person. Tom said no, he was not. Karen said so. Either someone forged his handwriting to write fake log entries in a notebook nobody was going to look at for weeks, or her father kept logging contacts after he died. Tom said those did appear to be the options. Karen asked which one he believed. Tom said he believed the coax on the North Run was failing, exactly as the entry described. He replaced it last Tuesday. Karen said he was still worried about the antenna. Tom said it appeared so. Karen said of course he was. She asked if she could keep the logbook. Tom said it was always hers. Tom went home and sat down at his own station. He opened his own logbook, a spiral-bound notebook, not as elegant as Walter's, but consistent. 14 years of contacts, all in his own hand. He tuned to 14.313. Nothing. The frequency was quiet. 20 meters was closing for the night, the propagation fading as the ionosphere settled into its nocturnal configuration. He turned off the radio, and then he turned it back on, because he had thought of something. The 14 call signs in Walter's logbook, the ones that did not exist in the FCC database. He had searched them as exact matches, but he had not searched for what they spelled. He opened his laptop and typed them out. He said them aloud. Got, never, remember, past, find, keeper, down, log, true, message, heard, clear, sky, final. He rearranged them. Read them in sequence. Got the message down. Never passed. Find the true log keeper. Remember. Heard clear. Sky final. He tried again. Different order. Message heard. Clear sky. Never find the true keeper. Remember the log. Got past. Down. Final. None of the sequences made a sentence. But they were not random. They were words. Hidden in call sign suffixes that had never been issued, logged by a dead man in handwriting that had not changed. And one of them, KB2FND, had a note in the logbook that said, "He will find this eventually." That is the point. Tom closed the laptop. He looked at his own logbook, 14 years of contacts. His own handwriting on every page. He turned to the next blank page. He picked up a pen, and then he put it down, because Tom Aldrin had realized something that made him set the pen down very carefully and sit very still. His own call sign was N2TAL. The suffix was TAL, and if you spelled it out the way you spell out the call signs in Walter's logbook, it said one thing, tell, N2TAL, tell. Walter had not just left a message. He had chosen who would find it. This has been Ham Radio Stories, original radio mysteries inspired by the world of amateur radio. Until next time, keep the volume up and listen just above the noise.